So let's do some rapid fire questions.
All right, shoot.
All right. How long you been married?
Be 10 years this year.
10 years this year. How'd you meet your wife?
I met her on Facebook.
On Facebook?
Uh-huh.
Just randomly, just like scrolling through, went to the same school? Like, what's the story?
So I'll give you the full story.
All right, the full story.
So it was my end of my sophomore year of college.
Okay.
So after JUCO, I was going to Missouri Western, right, to play baseball.
Where's that at?
It's up in St. Joe, Missouri.
St. Joe, okay.
So I had a buddy that went to school up there. And so I'm looking at his buddy list, on Facebook. Now, this is like Facebook.
Early stages.
Like, yeah, you had to have a user or a
like
email address.
Like a
for
.edu.
a
Yep.
.edu email.
Yep.
So I'm going through his Facebook, like all his friends. I'm just adding people.
Right.
Boys, girls, just trying to meet friends before I get up there. So I know, have an idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Just clicking for friend requests.
That's it. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Fishing. I'm just throwing it out there, see what happens. That's all. So, I find Helen find my wife. Helen. I was just gonna say it. I found Helen on there.
Right.
And I added her up. And so, like with all these people, like I would send them a message. Hey, my name's Dominic. I'm gonna be coming to school up there.
Right.
What's there to do? What's the town like? Haven't really been up there, but like one time for a college visit.
So this was before you had ever actually gone to school there.
Yeah.
Right. So you're putting feelers out so
Yeah.
you could be acclimated, know some people when you get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went up there for the college tryout visit deal for the baseball, and then I was there for half a day probably. And
Right.
then came home.
Right.
So that's all the time I had up there. So I added her up, and I was like, "Hey, my name's Dominic. I'm gonna be going to school up at Missouri Western. Gonna play baseball up there.
Yeah.
You're gonna be a junior. What is there to do up there? It looks like you have some experience up there. So
Sure.
what is there fun to do up in St. Joe?"
Right.
And so it's like she messaged me back, and we just kind of started talking.
So she was older then because you were a freshman.
Oh no, I'm older than her, but
Okay.
I was on the 5-year plan, Brian.
Gotcha. I hear you. I got you.
So we did that. I talked to her, and then it was getting time ready for school to start.
Right.
And I was like, "Hey, you want to meet up when we get up there? Go have dinner or something like that?" She's like, "Yeah, sure." So we went out to Red Lobster.
Red Lobster.
You
The
know?
cheddar biscuits.
Oh, Cheddar Bay biscuits,
man.
baby. And you know me, fresh college kid with some money.
Yeah,
right.
right.
Had zero money.
Spare no expense.
We're gonna go to the Red Lobster, babe.
But she accepted and went on the date.
Yeah, we went on the date, and just talked. And the funniest thing was, so this is the first night, right? Now, back in the day, I was a pretty big bowler.
Okay.
All right. Now, a lot of people know I used to bowl pretty good.
Bowling.
Bowling. You know?
Okay.
10 pin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Not Wii bowling, the
No,
physical
the
bowling.
physical bowling, right? And I got pretty good at it. So after we get done eating dinner, my buddies are all guys from the team are like, "Hey, we're going to go to the bowling alley. You want to come to the bowling alley?" I'm like, "Absolutely." I said, "Hell, you want to go to the bowling alley?" "Sure, we can go to the bowling alley." "So you going to bowl?" She's, "Nah, probably not." I said, "Well, we're going to go to the bowling alley if you're okay with that." She's like, "Okay." Now they had cheap drinks.
Right,
it was
yeah.
like $5 all you could drink type of thing. So we get there, and she didn't know I had my bowling ball, my bowling shoes in the truck.
One little surprise.
So I roll in there and get out. She's just kind of looking at me. I knew she was just kind of like taken back by it. Like, what's this guy doing?
Like I thought you were a baseball player, not
Right.
a bowler.
So we go there and do the bowling thing. Bowled pretty well. I had to show off for the new
And
girl.
did she bowl?
No.
No,
she
she
sat
didn't
there
bowl.
and watched. Right. Now, luckily, some of the other guys had their girlfriends there, dates there for the evening.
So she had some people to talk to while you guys were getting the bowl on. I
So
get it.
It was good. Yeah, so that's basically it. And then, yeah, here we are.
Here you are. So how long did you guys date before you proposed?
So we had a little rough deal, right? So we dated for like the first month or two of college.
Okay.
And then I went on a hiatus.
Gotcha.
I wasn't ready for a relationship.
Feeling your oats out, you're a young buck. I get it.
I was just in a relationship for a long time. And I was like, I'm just really not ready for a relationship, that kind of thing. So I was like, let's just take a step back.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Totally makes sense.
So at the end of the year, we're all out at this club in St. Joe, Missouri. Yes, they had a club. It was called 10-16 or something like that. It was a dump, but it was a good time.
But it was a good time for the college kids.
You know? So we go there, and I'm actually the sober driver for that night.
That surprises me.
Yeah. Right? You gotta have
Just
a
after knowing you for a while, you don't seem like the first guy to kind of raise the hand up and say, "Hey, I think I'll be the driver tonight."
So I was a sober driver. Ended up running into her up there at the club. She was with a bunch of her sorority sisters or whatnot, and we just started talking again. And I was really sober, so I had good conversation.
Sure, right, totally get it.
And then ever since then, we just been together.
Just been together.
Yeah,
That's awesome, man.
pretty crazy.
So, what brought you back to St. Louis?
Just family. All
Family?
my family's from here. After college, we went out to Kansas City.
Okay.
I was a graphic designer out there I did that for probably 2 years, I guess it was.
Okay.
And then ended up getting into freight logistics after that.
Okay.
I worked out there for, I think we were there for 6 years.
Okay.
I
Kansas
think,
City seems
something
like a
that.
pretty cool town.
I love Kansas City, man.
Big sports. We got Royals, Kansas
yeah.
City. You got soccer. You guys just seems like seems like to me like it's a smaller big town.
And that's what it is. So, like, what's cool about Kansas City is to me, it's clean, right? Everything is clean. Downtown, clean.
Right.
And, like, here in St. Louis, you have, like, bad, like, areas. Right? Like, you don't go to this area. Kansas City is like, don't go down this street and you'll be okay. Right?
Exactly.
Which is kind of how it probably should be. But I don't know if you've ever been to a Royals game out there. Like
I have.
a Chiefs game.
Oh, Kaufman. I
There's nothing better than that tailgating right there. That experience is unbelievable.
So I got to tell you. So when I met my wife, her folks had season tickets to the Rams back when they were here in St. Louis, and so I remember going to my first Rams game. I'd never been to one until I'd met my wife.
Sure.
And it was so disjointed, right? Because downtown there are like tailgating, like in this parking lot, then 2 blocks over here, then
Right.
4 blocks over here. And I always envisioned like what it was like in Kaufman and Arrowhead.
one big
where
party.
It's one big parking lot. You got all 75,000 people, both opposing teams, like
Right.
right there in the parking lot, just having a ball 4 or 5 hours before the game.
Yeah.
Just that atmosphere. And
It's
two, being
incredible.
outside, right? Like there's nothing like being in a football game in the middle of November and it's 25 degrees and you're bundled up and you had your beers and your hot
Yeah.
dogs and all your good sides right before. Like there's just something about when you go watch a sporting event like that, like the
It's
elements
fun.
make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that place gets electric. And
Yes.
They tailgate. I mean, now obviously I've only experienced St. Louis and Kansas City. But just the atmosphere and like the camaraderie with all the people. I mean, everybody's so nice. Doesn't matter if you're, for the Raiders or for the Rams or
Right.
whoever you're for.
Totally agree.
Everybody's friendly, right? I have never had an issue with anybody at Kaufman.
It's like the one kind of thing that can bring us all together, regardless of what your beliefs are, X, Y, Z. Like you're
Right.
there to watch a sporting event, like just a bunch of dudes hammer it out for 3 hours, pay overpriced
yeah.
beers, but it's something about that atmosphere. And I always joked with my wife, at the Rams stadium, you'd walk in middle of winter, it's 80 degrees, there's women in high heels, and they look like they're getting ready to go to a club because
Right.
it's so warm inside.
Yeah.
And then you flip that and you go to Arrowhead, and it's like you're in your coveralls, your jacket, your scarf,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's like it's
You're
just something
bundled
about
up.
that electric. It's like the environment is just as important to me as the actual game you're watching.
Right. And I mean, and those people are dedicated. Like,
Oh, they are.
If the game's at 3 o'clock, they're there at 7 a.m. to start tailgating.
Totally agree.
And I don't know if you ever did that when you were out there, but if you start tailgating at 7 a.m. by 3 o'clock game time, you're pretty
You're ready to go.
sauced up.
You're definitely ready to go.
You're primed up, baby. The cold weather has no effect on you
You're
anymore.
definitely ready to go. Okay, so let's switch gears here. What's your favorite drink if you're just on a Saturday afternoon, chilling at the pool, the house, whatever with friends? What would be your drink of choice?
Are we talking like alcoholic drink or
I'm talking adult beverage here.
adult beverage?
Adult beverage.
All right. If I'm just hanging out, I like a good Jack and Coke.
Good Jack and Coke.
I like a good Jack and Coke.
Nice. What about the wife?
Her,
What would her, this kind of tests like how well do you know your spouse after 10, 12
You
years? Like, what would
know-
her drink be?
probably water. No, she's been into the high noons lately. She's been drinking a lot of those. So
It seems like kind of the in drink. I mean, all these seltzers,
Right.
the Bud Light Select seltzers and all these kind of things. It just sort of seems like that's for both men and women. That's kind of the in thing.
What about you? What's yours?
Oh man, so I'll tell you, I've never really been into hard spirits. When I first met my wife, I got a joke. So we went to this nice restaurant down in Springfield and trying to wine and dine her, right?
Sure.
The guy gives me this menu it's a wine selection menu, right? It's got 5 pages. I'm looking at it. I'm trying to be like this. I think I was 25, 26 at the time. I'm trying to be like this. Yep, I'm an established 26-year-old guy. I know what I'm doing. I'm looking through it. After like 5 minutes, I was like, I gotta tell you, I don't drink wine. If you want a glass of wine, like have at it. Like make sure it's not over $100 or something, because I'm not that wealthy. But like have at it. So I tried to drink wine with my wife when we first got married, but I got to tell you, just not my palate. So I'm a beer guy.
Yeah.
Busch Light. I love in the summertime, Corona with a lime or Bud Light lime.
Sure.
Just kind of a nice summery
Fresh,
drink.
right? Like a freshie.
Yeah. So it's easy to pack in the cooler, but that's sort of
Yeah.
I'm a beer guy, right?
Yeah. I mean, like I will drink beer 90% of the time. And like for me, it kind of goes within like seasons, right? So like
exactly.
Summertime, I'm more beer, and like, yes, I'll dabble in the seltzers a little bit, whatever.
They're good to mix in every now and then.
Yeah, something sweet here and there doesn't hurt anybody.
Exactly.
Then like the wintertime, I drink more, rum and whiskeys and stuff like that. But it just, I don't know, kind of flows with the seasons.
Yeah,
right?
I've tried to get into. So I've got some buddies that are really big into bourbons.
Sure.
And so I've tried to do like the bourbon on ice, the bourbon straight. Some of my buddies use like these kind of $high cherries that they get and they put in their bourbons. I think it's like an acquired palate.
It is.
And even they'll say it like, man, the first times I was drinking bourbon, like, didn't like it, burned like heck going down. Yep. But I think you just kind of have to like acclimate yourself to the taste and the flavors and the oakiness versus the smoky and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I'm kind of more of just a straight up, like, just give me a beer and
I'm happy.
Give me a beer and a pool and let my kids play and I'm good, man.
So how did you and Courtney meet?
So it's kind of funny. So I thought I was being set up with my wife, and I think she thought she was just meeting some people. So she was going to doctoral school down in Bolivar, and she was really good friends with the girlfriend of one of my fraternity brothers.
Okay.
And so it was around September of, a long time ago. And so I was hunting, and my buddy sends me a text, and he's like, "Hey, we're down at the lake, and my girlfriend's got this girl she's going to school with. How about we set you guys up, right?" And I was like, I don't know. I'm hunting. I got to get up early in the morning to go hunt. I don't know if I'm into it, right?
Sure.
He's like, "Come on, just take a shower, get dressed, come on out, right?"
Yeah.
So we go out to Captain Ron's down Lake of the Ozarks. Pretty well-known establishment.
Been there.
So we go there, and I'm having a couple of beers with my buddies, and all of a sudden she shows up, right? So here I am thinking, oh, yep, this is it. Like we're on a blind date.
Sure.
Bam, hands out, like, nice to meet you. This chick has no clue who I am, right? So I'm like, "Hey, I'm Brian. It's nice to meet you, right?" And she's kind of like, it's nice to meet you too. So my first impression was like, well, doggone it. Like, that was just, what is going on? Like, I thought, like, you were looking for a 25-year-old guy. Like, that's me. I got a job. I'm a pretty decent guy. So we go to this bar, right? We're drinking. She's kind of giving me the cold shoulder. I'm telling my buddies, like, gosh, this is going horrible. Like, this chick doesn't even want to be around me, right?
Not interested.
So then we go to this place. I don't even know if it's still open. It was called the Blue Room. It was kind of like the only nightclub at the Lake of the Ozarks. So we spent like an hour at Captain Ron's. And so like, let's go to the Blue Room. So we go to the Blue Room, right? So we get to the Blue Room, and I'm kind of talking to her a little bit. She's kind of opening up a little bit. And I just straight up tell her, like, I thought this was a blind date, and you don't really seem like you're into dating. And she's like, what are you talking about? She's like, I'm just down here with some of my girlfriends. And I was like, well, I was told this was like a blind date. And she's kind of going like, that's not what I heard. And so her brother's there, by the way, right? Oh, so her brother's like 19, maybe 20. She's drinking at the bar, shouldn't have been, blah, blah, blah. So he's like overlooking us. There was like a dance floor, and there was like a seating up above. So he's like watching us, giving me the dirty eye the whole time. I finally get the courage to kiss her, so I kiss her at the dance club, and I get her phone number. And that's kind of how it all started. She wrote her name on the back of a tropical liqueurs like punch card from Columbia, Missouri. And I still carry it around in my wallet to this day. Like 14 years later, I still got it. But that's how we met. And it's funny. I kind of fast forward now. I got a good relationship with her brother.
Yeah.
But I guess that night he told her, so I'm a cowboy boot, cowboy hat kind of guy, right? So that night, I guess, after we met and I got her phone number and we went our separate ways, I guess he looked at his sister and said, you know, Courtney, he goes, you could do a lot better than a guy that wears cowboy boots. And so it was funny, like 2 or 3 years later, right, we're doing a Christmas thing, and I just bought a new pair of cowboy boots for myself. And so he was a big Mizzou guy, and so I think for Christmas I got him like this Mizzou sweatshirt. Well, I put it in a cowboy boot box.
Oh, shit.
Wrap it up, give it to him. So Christmas morning, right, like here's this like 22-year-old kid. He's opening up this wrapping paper, and it says like, you know, whatever, Ariat cowboy boots. And you could just see like the look of disappointment and almost like hate, like, you got me cowboy boots.
Son of a gun.
Well, he opens it up and it's like this Mizzou sweatshirt and maybe a hat or something. But yeah, that's how we originally met. And I got to tell you, it was sort of, I remember telling one of my buddies after we left the bar that I truly believe in love at first sight. And so I remember leaving this Blue Room place, going back to one of my buddies' houses. And I told him, I said, I'm going to marry that girl one day.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he was like, oh, you're full of crap, Martin. You know, like, you know, you're not going to marry this guy. You just met her. And so literally about 3 months later, we got engaged.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That was quick.
So it was super quick.
Yeah. What did her parents think about that?
You know, I think they were kind of skeptical, but we sort of set the line. So she was obviously in school. I was done. And so I said, hey, you know, like, let's get engaged. You finish school, we'll get married after. So we were engaged for probably, I'm going to say over 2 years,
Okay.
2.5 years. But yeah, it was quick. I mean, you know, three months in, I was like, you're it. Like, I want to marry you. Will you marry me? And, you know, we've been married now. I guess we just celebrated our 12-year wedding anniversary. So we've been together 14, 15 years. But yeah, that's how. I still kind of laughed at that day. Like, I thought I was getting set up with, like, the future missus, and she's just kind of like, you're just some dude at a bar.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who you are, but, like, you're just a dude at a bar.
But my buddies are setting me up here.
Yeah, I kind of went in with some false pretense of,
Right.
like, hey, I'm interrupting a hunting adventure here for, you're kind of not really being.
What'd your buddies have to say about that? Like,
So-
did you ever bring that up to them?
So it was kind of funny. So my fraternity brother, his wife kind of set us up, you know. I brought it up one time. I think we were at a dinner or something. I said, you know, I kind of thought, I guess the long and the short of it is we ended up together, right?
Sure.
But I think there was a little disconnect in communication between, like, I don't know if they were luring me to come out because I just
Right.
wasn't going to come out that night. And I'm so thankful that I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it's just one of those things. I kind of believe in love at first sight. And,
Yeah.
you know, I had dated other girls prior to that. I was 25 or 26. And I just kind of knew, like, yep, you're it. Like, this is the
Gonna be
one.
I'll be damned. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I haven't. That's a good story. I mean, our story was pretty good too. Met her on Facebook, you know, kind of
Like the internet scrolling, double
like
click.
complete creeper style. Like,
But that's kind of, you know, that's sort of, you were just trying to get yourself acclimated to the community you were going to be in, right?
and that's what I always say to everybody. Like, I was trying to acclimate myself, right? But she was attractive, right? Like, I wasn't just adding up any ugly people.
And that's the cool thing. Like, you know, people talk a lot about the negativity of technology, but that's like one of the positives, right? Like, you were
Right.
able to meet people virtually
Yeah.
before you were actually there. So
Exactly.
it kind of makes that transition easier.
Well, yeah. I
for
mean,
you
I knew everybody on my baseball team before I went there.
before you went there.
Specifically because of Facebook, and then from there, obviously, we like exchange phone numbers, stuff like that. But majority of it was all just text messages through Facebook Messenger, you know, and talking on that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's interesting
I
how.
always say it's the original dating site, Facebook.
Well, it's funny. So I totally get, you know, I'm totally switching gears here, but
You're good.
you know, technology, I get if you were a 25-year-old working professional and you're working 40, 50 hours a week, right? You take your career seriously. You're not really going to be going to the bars on the weeknights. Like,
No.
I understand how that's a very normalized medium to meet other like-minded individuals that you're
Right.
trying to, like, you're at that stage where you're like,
Sure.
hey, I'm 25. I'm kind of tired of the bar scene. I'm really just kind of looking for a Mr. or a Mrs. to
Right.
settle down with, right?
Yeah.
So I totally get it. It's just the
I
way
don't
it
think
is
there's
today.
anything wrong with it.
Nothing wrong
you
with
know?
it.
I mean, at the end of the day, you got to think about, okay, well, how valuable is my time, right? What does my time cost?
Right.
Am I going to have more success on these dating websites or whatever, or more success at the bar? Well, if I'm on a dating website, you can knock out how many people at one time, right?
Right.
Where if you're at the bar, you got, chance of maybe 3 people to talk to, if they even talk to you,
Exactly.
you know? I mean, it's not all bad. I mean, yes, there's a lot of bad things that can come out of all those dating websites and stuff like that, but at the end of the day,
I think you could probably
I
weed
think you
yourself
can-
through it.
yeah, I think it would be very navigated, be able
Yeah.
to navigate it. Obviously, I've never had to do that, right? So I don't know what they're looking like these days.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So, in my perfect world scenario here, like, it would be pretty easy to navigate,
That's what it would be. Yeah.
you know?
Okay, so we're at the weekend, right? Friday night, doing our first podcast. So what does a great weekend look like for you and your family, man?
For us,
Summertime, by the way. We're not in the wintertime. We're
summertime.
summertime, baby.
Summertime, I mean, ideally, I could be at the pool all day long, every day. I mean, the pool is my happy place.
Absolutely, man.
If I could spend 99% of the week in there, that's where I would stay.
And we only get it like what, 90 days? We don't live
Yeah.
in like Phoenix, Arizona, where you get
No.
a pool.
You
Maybe
just gotta
it's 12 months out of the year. I don't know, but at least 9 or 10
You
months.
just got to soak it up here,
You
man.
got
Like,
to.
And you have to take advantage of every weekend. Like tomorrow, we have a baseball, or we have a hockey game at 11. And then after the hockey game, we're
Pool
gonna go to the
time,
pool.
baby.
I'll be at the pool from about 1 o'clock to about 8 o'clock.
Yeah, that was one of the allures of this neighborhood, is having a community pool. We came from a neighborhood that we loved it, right? Loved our neighbors.
Yeah.
But there was nothing really to do
There was
on the
nothing to
weekend.
do. There was nothing to
And
do.
so like the pool is like that common congregation spot where you can it's kind of funny too. You probably notice this, like in the wintertime, right? It's cold.
Yeah.
Kids aren't outside riding bikes, playing ball, playing
Nobody's
basketball. So you pull in your garage, shut the door, bam.
You're home.
And so I love this time of year because it's almost kind of like bears coming out of hibernation,
Yeah.
right? People are
Everybody's
coming
out.
out. You're all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, your kids are 5 inches taller
Right.
and you've lost weight and
Yeah.
you got a new hairstyle. And so that's what I think I love about it, is just the sort of the communal atmosphere.
Well, yeah.
It's at the pool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the subdivision we came from before we moved over here, I mean, we knew our neighbors. They're nice. We always hang out with them, stuff
Right,
like that.
right.
But, like, there was a whole bunch of kids down the street. Well, you never talked to those kids because they never came up to our end. We would go down to their end, and they would act like we're, strangers.
Right.
Which I'm just not into that. Like, I will sit here and talk to anybody about anything. Like, I met you one night walking home from my buddy's house.
Walking home.
You know,
From a family, right? Wasn't it a family?
yeah, it was over at Sean's house, and we're walking home, and I run into you. You're in your garage cleaning it up, and you're like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
It was probably like 1:45 in the morning, right? So put a little context in, like, why am I in my garage cleaning and drinking beer at 1:45, and why is this dude walking in the neighborhood at 1:45?
And so just like, I'm just going home. You're like, "Where do you live at?" Up the street, a new house on the corner down there. He goes, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, because our street pretty much, I think, had like
was-
6 or 7
Yeah, there was
houses. I mean, there were
nobody
no
here.
houses.
Yeah. So, then we just started bullshitting, and one thing led to another, and here we are.
And here we are doing a podcast, right? Families are together all the time.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, too. So we moved into this neighborhood, and I remember like the first 3 or 4 months, the golf cart like extravaganza that exists in suburban America. And I always envisioned it, Dom, like golf carts are for 80-year-olds who live in Florida on a golf course
100%.
because you need it to golf, right? You're 80 and you can't
Yeah.
walk 18 holes.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden we move into this neighborhood, and we're walking one night, our dogs, and I'm looking at all these third-car garages going, golf cart, golf cart, golf cart. Oh my gosh! Every home has a golf cart.
It's
like, where are they
disgusting.
driving these golf carts to? Like, are they taking them to the Walmart, the store? Like,
Right.
where are they driving these things?
Right. Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, obviously we fell into that trap too.
Well, we did
Right?
too. So originally I thought like, oh, it must be for the folks that like live way down the neighborhood and they need it for the pool, right?
Yeah,
Because
get
nobody
to the
wants to
pool.
put their 6 and 2-year-old wet and swimsuits in your nice fancy car, right? I get that. So I'm sitting here going like, well, what's the justification when you live next to the pool? And then I'm kind of like you, next thing you know, 3 months later, we got a golf cart.
Oh, yeah.
But I got to tell you, some of my favorite nights are when, we have dinner, we walk the dog, and then we just on a late summer night like like tonight, we
Right.
get in the golf cart and just drive around.
Just drive around.
And that's
yeah.
how you meet neighbors.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what I love is, so like we'll go after dinner some nights, and you see Dominic's got all these kids that he goes to school with. And
Sure.
you see him outside, and oh, Dad, that's so and so. That's so and so. Can we stop and talk? Sure, buddy. So we'll stop and talk, and then our ride gets cut short, but we'll
Yeah.
start talking, and they'll play, and because they haven't seen him all summer unless they see him at the pool.
Exactly.
But yeah, getting to know everybody and just driving around and seeing the sights. I mean, because our neighborhood is kind of pretty.
It is.
I mean, there's different things in here that it's cool to see.
It
And
is.
then now it's cool to watch everything's growing, right? So there's houses being built every day that is changing the whole look of the whole landscape of what's going on here.
And it's crazy how quickly it's changed.
Oh, it's so fast.
So, I mean, literally, we've been here for maybe a little over 2 years. And, I mean, our whole street was dirt minus the first house you built, not the second, the first house you
Yeah.
built, which that's another story.
That's right.
But just in 2 years, all of a sudden, there's got to be 15 to 20 homes on our street. And
Well,
it used to
yeah.
be like, we used to play baseball in the lot across.
Right.
And I thought it was so cool because I was like, oh my gosh, we have like our own sand lot. Like, this is
Sure.
great. And then, you fast forward and all of a sudden there's home.
Right.
But it's crazy just in that short amount of time how many families have now moved and called like our community home.
Oh yeah, and it's great. And like so we've been here exactly a year. It was in May, right? Yeah, it was in May.
Yeah, May of last year, I think
Yeah,
is when I
May
met
of
you.
last year. And when I moved on this street, it was our house, Jeff and Leslie's, what's his name's, Jay's.
Yeah, right there in the back of the
That
cul-de-sac.
was a cul-de-sac. Our house that we built across the street.
And then it was us,
And
like
then
we
Jason.
were like, yeah, us and
then
Jason.
nothing else. I think Tessie and Alec were
Yeah,
there
I
too.
think they were kind of right in there.
Yeah, and that was it. Which
crazy.
is crazy, because now our whole street's full. You got behind us, it's halfway up the street already.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's nuts, man.
And what's kind of cool, I still go back to this, and I feel sometimes like kids are the key connection point between adults becoming friends.
100%.
Because it's almost like you put these kids in this metaphorical sandbox, and you're like, wait a minute, your kid and my kid get along, so that must mean that you and I might get along,
Yeah.
right? And so it's kind of funny to watch these kids sort of develop these bonds.
Right.
And then, 2 steps behind, it's the mom and dads going like, well, hey, looks like your daughter's friends with our daughter, so we
Yeah.
need to figure out, like, I'm Brian.
Yeah.
I'm, who.
We
what's
should
your
probably
name?
be friends.
We should probably be friends because our kids clearly
Kids
click.
like each other.
Yeah.
And we need to be friends.
And that's what's so cool about our street is because there's so many kids in the same classes, same grade
Oh,
levels. And I'll tell you, Dom, like I don't want to fast forward time, but I'm really excited to see like these kids grow up together.
Yeah,
and
it's gonna be
obvious-
awesome.
Yeah, I get that there's going to be turnover and people are going to have to
sure.
leave for family issues or jobs.
Right.
But I really hope sort of our little group on our street kind of gets to stay and we get to watch these kids like,
Yeah.
go from 3 and 4 to 18 years old and proms
yeah,
and
'cause, I mean,
graduations.
What they're going to start doing is they're all going to, I think they all kind of do already. They're creating this bond, right? That like brotherly, sisterly, bond
Exactly.
That you just don't get that, right?
You don't get that in adulthood.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just what I love is, my daughter, she's the youngest of the group, right?
Right?
But all the girls and all the kids still play with her.
Absolutely.
They still include her, which to me is
Absolutely.
awesome, right? Because, I mean, the second youngest is, they're all in kindergarten, right? After
Exactly.
that. So my daughter still got 2 years before she's in kindergarten.
But they're just like this little
Yeah.
group of just the pure, I guess, like innocence of childhood friendships.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool. Like it doesn't matter what grade level you're in, what sport you're in. Like they're very cohesive, I guess.
Yeah, it's great.
And it's pretty. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, it's pretty cool that the parents all get along and we all like.
It makes it way easier.
It makes it way easier when everybody can kind of like learn to cohabitate,
Right.
knowing that your kids are getting along and like it just.
Well, I remember, like, last year we would go hang out, and this is like shortly after we all met, and we'd all be, hanging out at somebody's house, and it was cool and having fun. But, like, again, it was the kids that kind of forced everybody to get along,
Exactly.
right? Like, if my kid didn't like your kid, well, we wouldn't be friends. It's just simple as that.
But then you take it another level, and they talk about, I don't know if it's Oprah Winfrey or whoever talks about that 5 levels of connectedness, like in the world. So it's like you gain friendships by the friendships that you've created from the bonds of your kids, right? So you extrapolate that out. Like, I've met and grown to really love some of your friends that you went to grade school, elementary school, and high school because they happen to dwell in this neighborhood.
Right.
And we may have never crossed paths had Dominic, your son and my son met. It's just kind of cool. Like your friendship circle grows. And it's what I always tell my kids, like, you can put value on a lot of different things in life, but there's nothing like having the value of a friend.
Yeah, friend.
Like friendship
family.
is this intangible, can't put a dollar amount on it.
No, absolutely. And that's what's great about this is like we've all become this one big family, and it's you watch after my kids, I watch after your kids, and it just works.
It's like it takes a village, right?
It
it's like that old adage of like it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're creating this really cool micro-habitable village in our little ecosystem we call a neighborhood.
And it's like what I said before earlier. It's like, back in the day, this is how we grew up, right? You had friends, and like everybody kind of was watching out for everybody's kids and stuff like that. And then you get fast forward to now, and it's like, different subdivisions that I've been in. Everybody's, hides out and stays to themselves.
Exactly.
But here it's like, man, I feel like I'm like, 12 again, like 13 again.
Sure.
I can run the streets. I can do this. I can do that. Like, it just kind of, I don't know, restores faith in humanity a little bit, for me.
Which is not a bad thing.
No.
After, what we've had to go through the last 24 to 28 months with a pandemic. I mean, I got to tell you, before like that even happened, if you had asked me what a pandemic was, I probably would have looked at you with deer in the headlight looks going like, I'd have no clue what that means. Is that like in a movie, like World War Z or something? Like, I don't know, what is a pandemic? So you're right, like he's restoring that humanity piece. I mean, that's really what keeps sort of the world going, in my opinion. It's just looking out after your neighbor, treating someone the way you want to be treated, sort of that old golden rule adage.
Right.
So, yeah, I totally agree with that, man. Like, it's needed, not just in our little state or nation, but in the world. You look at everything that's going on right now, and that stuff is needed, just the restoration of humanity and kindness.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here.
All right. I like curveballs.
So here's
I couldn't hit them in high school, but I like curveballs.
here's one for you. If you could be anything you wanted, if anything you could be, what would you be?
Geez, that's a good question. So I got to tell you, it kind of reminds me of like a Seinfeld episode. So where George, by the way, disclaimer, I love Seinfeld, right? I think I've seen every season, every episode a million different times. To date myself, I watched it in prime time. So there's this one scene where George brags about being an architect, right? He's not, right? I don't even know what George, I think he worked for the Yankees, right, in Seinfeld. But I always wanted to be an architect. As a kid, I always had this fascination with, like, you remember the square graph paper that had all the little squares? Like, I would, like, the house we lived in growing up as a kid, I'd draw the house schematics and then go like, oh, well, here's the ratio of inches to feet.
Right.
So I think if I could have, like, gone back in time, I probably would have wanted to be an architect.
Yeah.
I kind of aimlessly went through school, not quite knowing what I went to business school, but kind of coming out going like, well, what do I do now, right?
Yeah.
And also having this misnomer that like, oh, at the age of 21, I'm going to make $100,000 right out of college.
Right.
And so I applied for some jobs at some banks, doing some loan analysis, and you're getting these offers for salaries, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm a college graduate. Like, I need 6 figures.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'd be an architect. How about you?
So I don't know that about you, right?
Right. You had no clue until I just threw that out.
Okay.
An architect.
I was gonna be an architect.
What? Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Swear to God. So
How funny is that?
like in high school and JUCO, like high school, I took architectural design classes, CAD classes.
Really?
The whole works.
Which kind of makes sense because you were graphic design, like into that sort of mindset.
And then when I went to JUCO, I took CAD. So I took CAD like 1, 2, and 3, or CAD 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
Broke up over, like 2 semesters. And I finished the class in like 2 weeks. The
Wow.
whole class.
The whole class.
The whole class.
Wow.
Because the teacher's like, have you done this before? I'm like, yeah, I can do this stuff in my sleep.
Right. This came naturally to you.
So then it came, it was like the whole baseball thing got in the way, right?
Right.
So, got an offer from K-State,
okay.
which is a huge...
It's a huge school.
Huge school.
Yeah.
It was a huge architectural school, right?
So it just fit.
It just fit.
Passion of baseball,
Yeah.
a way to pay for it, and you get to do a profession you want
Yep.
to do.
Not enough money.
Not enough money.
So I just kind of was like, well, screw it. And then, I mean, back then I was like, I'm going to go to the place that's going to give me the most money. Right. Because my parents, luckily I was fortunate enough my parents paid for my schooling. And I didn't want to put that burden on them, right? Like,
right.
I was a college athlete. I should be able to get a scholarship that's going to pay for what I'm doing. Anything else I need up there, they'll help me pay for it and kind of go from there. But yeah, so I was going to be an architect.
An architect.
Oh yeah.
That's crazy. It's kind of funny when you like look back on life, sort of like what you ended up doing versus what you thought you were going to do.
Yeah.
And then you sort of extrapolate that out into like kind of, at least I do.
Yeah.
When I look at my kids and see like what they're into, like my daughter loves art, right? She loves drawing, loves doing all, it was never my thing. So I always contemplate with my kids, like, I wonder what, it's cool for me, I guess, because I'm like, I wonder what you're going to be when you get older.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to be an architect? Are you going to be a cook? Are you going to be what are you going to be?
Yeah. Are you going to be an artist or whatever? Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something cool to think about because, I mean, now I'm in logistics. I have trucks and a brokerage, and that's what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's nothing that I ever thought I
what you thought you were going to do. So I work in healthcare, but if you really kind of had to sort of dive in on exactly what I do, I'm kind of like a professional writer. That's really what I do when I write for a living.
Okay.
Write contracts, grant applications. We're a nonprofit health center. And had I if you rewind back to my college years, right? If you're in business school, English, composition, like that's not the goal of business school.
No.
It's to write a comprehensive sentence that's grammatically correct with all, that's not it. And it's kind of funny, like you fast forward now 20 years, and that's kind of what I get paid to do. And I would have never thought that's what I was going to kind of be a writer one day, but that's, here I am, like I'm kind of a writer, and that's what I do for a living. And, I wouldn't change it at all. I get to impact lives, sort of from kind of behind the scenes, which I love.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of funny. Had you asked me 25 years ago, what would you be doing? I highly doubt I would have said what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Oh, I write papers.
I write papers for a living. Yeah, like that's what I do.
I could never do that, man. There's no way. I commend you on writing papers.
Well, and it's funny too. So my wife has a very physical job, right? So when she gets off work, kind of like your wife,
right?
Not that your wife wants to do this after work, but like when my wife gets done with work, the last thing she wants to do is be on her feet, be outside. She wants to just kind of like sit down and relax.
Yeah, hang out.
Right? I'm the other way. I sit in front of a computer all day long. So when 5 o'clock hits, the last thing I want to do is be inside.
Yeah.
Mow the yard, ride bikes. I pick up dog, like whatever it is. Like I do not want to be inside because I emphasize, I'm like, I've sat in that chair all day long looking at 2 computer screens. I don't want to be inside. I don't want to watch Wheel of Fortune. I don't want to watch a movie. Like I just want to sit outside if it's nice enough to sit outside.
Oh yeah, I'm the same way, man. I mean, sitting in front of two computer screens all day. I mean, it's mentally exhausting.
It is,
and like, it wears me down. So like, as soon as 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock rolls around, it's kids. We're outside. We're we're either riding bikes or, like you said, playing baseball or going to a practice or whatever the case may be. And I love that.
And I feel like our wives are the other way. Like they're on their feet all day. They're constantly
moving.
Their jobs require like constant movement.
Right.
Where you and I are more sedentary. Like we're just at a computer screen, on the phone, looking at a screen. Yeah. So it's like the last thing you want to do is just like sit on a couch and relax because it's like, well, I've been doing that since 7 a.m. Yeah. That's the last thing I want to do. Like I'm going to stand out in the garage.
Yeah.
And sometimes she'll come out and go like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just standing. I'm just standing in the garage.
Just hanging out.
I'm honestly looking around trying to figure out like something to do. Like maybe I should rehang the rakes, or the lawnmower needs to be moved over to this side. Like, because she's like, you're just a busybody trying to find something to do. And I'm like, because it's just because I sit all day.
Yeah. It drives me crazy. I mean, there's times where I sit there at my desk and I'm like, what if, right? What if I had a different job where I was outside all the time or constantly moving or whatever?
Sure.
Would I like it more, or would this be what I should be doing? You
Exactly.
know? I mean, for me, it's like, yes, I mean, I'm a mover and a shaker, most of the time. And don't get me wrong, my job is kind of intense because I'm on the phone, I'm making deals, I'm doing whatever.
Crazy deadlines probably to get things from X to Y.
It's crazy, and there's times where I get pretty amped up and like my blood's flowing. I'm like, just feeling good, like I feel like it's got to run.
Exactly.
Whatever. But like now it's just like, well, some days it's like, well, this kind of sucks, right? Like I'd rather be outside, especially now. Like when it's hot, I always get these thoughts. It's like, oh, it's hot outside. Yeah, I'm gonna start a lawn care company. I'm gonna go do something outside.
Something to do outside,
something
right?
that's not at this desk.
Or wintertime hanging Christmas lights.
Right. Yeah.
Which, by the way, like I feel like that is an opportunity for business, because this was the first year that our family paid to have Christmas lights put up.
Uh-huh.
And I guess call it like my fear of heights, whatever you want to call it. Like we paid a lot of money to have Christmas lights hung up. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity there for like business growth, right? Because there's so many people that want the pretty Christmas lights up on their houses, and they got a 2-story home and they don't have a 30-foot ladder. And it's like, that's what's kind of cool about the American concept of democracy is like you have those opportunities to like take the chance and get the reward.
Well, and that's it. And I think 99% of everything that we do in life, if the only reason why somebody else is more successful than you are is because they put the money up to do it.
They took the chance.
They took the chance. If you can take the chance and do something, I mean, I have no doubt in my mind, as long as you put your mind to it. Now, I'm not saying take, $100,000 and say, okay, hey, Mr. Batting Cage, I'm gonna throw $100,000 at you, and you're just gonna work, right?
Sure.
Now you got to make it happen.
You got to make it happen.
Right? You got to want it to happen.
The pre-planning, you got to make sure it works there.
If you were willing to take that money, put it on the table, and say, hey, I'm going to take $100,000 out of my family's life,
which is a huge risk.
And try to see if this works. I guarantee you'll make it work.
Absolutely.
100%.
I mean, it's that model of you've got to get the big reward. Yep. You've got to take the big risk. I mean, even the simplicity of like, right, so we go to Vegas a couple times, right? Mm-hmm. My wife and I'm not a gambler, right? Sure. I'm just not comfortable throwing $500 down on red and saying, let it ride.
Right.
But that's also the reason when we leave Vegas that I don't come away with thousands of dollars because I've put down $10 in slots to get my free beer and I lost it and I nursed the beer as much as I could. And that's why to me, that's apples to apples, right?
Yeah,
I'm not going to come home with $15,000 because I didn't put any money down.
Yeah.
So you can't put down $1. Maybe you can, but you can't put down $1 to get your free beer and come away with $1 millionaire, right?
No,
you got to be able to take the risk.
You got to pay to play.
You got to pay to. You got to take the risk.
That's it. It's all about risk.
And
man.
some
high
people
risk,
succeed, some don't. But that's sort of the American dream of like figuring out how you can sort of, if you have the ability and the desire to like take that risk and take yourself to a new level, because only you can do that.
Absolutely. I mean, like in our family, my dad owns a business. My grandpa owned several businesses growing up. Right. Hotels, laundromats.
Just dabbled in everything.
Dabbled in a little bit of everything, right? And he made it happen. The man had 2 motels at one time. Just making it happen.
And probably worked tireless. It wasn't working a 40-hour-a-week job, right? Putting in 70, 80, 90 hours, putting in the time and effort.
No, I can remember going down to the Lake of the Ozarks in the summertime. There's a motel right next door to Topsider. Topsider where the clown.
Right there by the Grand Glazed Bridge.
We would go down there, and they had a big pool, so like all day long we're swimming in the pool. We never left the top of the mountain, we called it.
The top of the mountain.
Never left.
Right by Topsider.
You go up to the hill, you don't go down.
I like
until
that.
your own home, right?
I like that.
So, we would do everything. We would go swimming. We'd go swimming in the lake. We had a little pontoon boat before it got too rough down there that we would drive around. But it was just every weekend we were down there. And then those are some of the best memories I have.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just hanging out down there, doing this, doing that. And that would be something like, I'm not saying I'm going to go buy a motel because now you got to buy a real fancy motel, right? Like, I'm not saying my grandpa's place was like the Ritz-Carlton or anything, but like it had a bed, it had a window unit for the.
It's all you needed for going down to the Lake of the
That's it, man.
Ozarks.
Yeah, it is what it is. But like if you were able to take, your money right now and invest it into something and some type of business that you're passionate about, there's no way it should fail.
Yeah, it's funny. So when you talk about that, when I was 16, 17 years old working on this gas dock, and this guy comes in, middle-aged guy, 40, 50 years old, comes in a super nice Baja, right, 42-foot, triple engine. And I remember as I'm docking his boat for him and tying him all up, I looked at him and I said, must be nice. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, what'd you say? And I said, man, it must be nice, man. You got this, wonderful wife, beautiful boat. You probably got a lake house. You live in St. Louis, Chicago, whatever.
Right.
And he looks right at me and he says, let me tell you something, son. He said, that is a nice boat, right? He said, I have worked my tail off to get to this point right now. I've put everything on the line. Mm-hmm. So he goes, just be real careful next time you say, must be nice, as though this has been gifted to me.
Right.
He said, I've put everything on the line. Mm-hmm. I have worked 100-hour weeks. Yeah. He said, and he was the most nice. It was like the most nicest delivery he could, but it was like this, it's a life lesson that I still remember, 25 years later, this guy saying, it wasn't just gifted to me, man.
Right.
I did this.
Yeah.
And you can too if you want to.
Yeah.
I did this.
Yeah.
I put in the blood, sweat, and tears to have this nice 42-foot boat and the lake house and the dock slips and the jet skis and the. Right. I did this. This wasn't just handed to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I still remember that to this day. I still remember I can still remember the look of the guy's face. And
I mean, it's conversations like that really will stick out in your life.
They
right?
do.
Like that there is what you call a life-changing moment.
It was.
Right? Because like you're like, oh well, damn. Like here I'm 16, 17 years old. I'm making judgment on this guy. Like, oh hey, your mom, dad buy you that boat, bud?
Exactly.
Is that inheritance? No, mother. I worked my butt off for this to make this happen.
Right. And he did it in the nicest way possible.
Sure.
It was just kind of like sort of check yourself before you make a comment that like must be nice to just have all this cool stuff. When in reality, like I think what he was implying to me, Dom, is like I've missed baseball games for this and soccer games, and I've missed probably important life moments to get to this point. Is it right or wrong? You decide as an individual. But I think he's kind of saying like a lot of sacrifice went into this.
Yeah.
My grandpa didn't just buy me a big old boat and say, here you go. Not saying that doesn't happen, but I think for me that's just kind of been this like life-altering, resonating wisdom that I've just and so I check myself when I see people, even kind of when I compare myself to people in the neighborhood or people that I work with, like, oh, that must be you know what, I don't know your backstory. I don't know your backstory.
Yeah. Let's get to know each other first, and then we'll talk, right?
Exactly. Totally right, man. Totally right.
Because, I mean, you have that all around, right? Because, like, you never know where somebody gets their money from, whether it be some kind of trust fund baby or somebody that is working their butts off, trying to make it, and it's, to me, I really just don't give a shit.
Same way,
I don't really care. Like, and I say this all the time to all my buddies is, I don't care what you have, how much you have, or how you got it. I truly don't care. Like, I don't care if you're a cook at McDonald's.
I love it.
As long as we can hang out and have a good time, that's all I care about.
That's all that matters.
That's it. I don't care if you make $5 or $100,000. Don't care.
Yeah. And I tell you, I wish more people thought that way.
Well, exactly. And there's not. I mean, you can see it.
You can see it. It's almost kind of like you got to compare apples to apples in order for us to be in the same kind of social level of like connectedness. And it's like, that's just not the way the world was intended to roll, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just don't. I mean, I just don't do it.
No, you're
because like half of me, if somebody starts talking about something they have, I just like what?
You just kind of zone out. Like you just don't care.
Don't care. I genuinely just do not care
because it doesn't matter.
Doesn't.
Because I kind of circling back to an earlier podcast we did. It's friendship for me, man. Like friendship is this intangible. Can't put a dollar amount on it because it's like you could have all the things in the world, but if you need help and you call a friend and you're like, hey, I need some help.
Right.
and you quickly realize like, oh, I don't have any friends to call.
Right.
Like then everything around you that you've created doesn't really matter
Doesn't matter.
because you don't have that bond, you don't have that commonality, you don't have that friendship, someone to share a story with
Mm-hmm.
or to laugh with or cry. And so it's like that's the commonality that kind of makes things work.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I don't know. It's just was gonna see what goes on. Let us know what you guys think.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, till next time. We'll see you later.